Regular viewers of Anachronic Comics know that comic book history is one of the major themes of my videos. As an attorney, I loved researching the law to resolve a question, and I've moved that same love to comic books. Comic book history is a fascinating and rich topic that spans over a century of cultural and artistic evolution. Comic books are not just stories about superheroes and villains, but also reflect the social, political, and aesthetic trends of their times. In this video, I'll explore some of the main features and milestones of different eras in comic book history. Stay tuned for the video. Anachronic. Hi comic book fans, I'm Joe and welcome to Anachronic Comics. As I researched the history behind the creation of various comic books, I came to the realization that each comic book age has defining characteristics that appear in the publications. Some are obvious, but others may not necessarily be evident to the casual reader. In this video, I've taken the liberty to name the eras a bit differently than typically seen, and I've included some links to my research in the description for those of you who may be interested in looking at them. Okay, so let's do this chronologically, and I'm going to start with the Pioneer Age, which began in the 1500s and ended in 1828. The Pioneer Age is the earliest period of comic book history, dating back to the invention of the printing press and the emergence of illustrated books and pamphlets. Now, these early comics were often satirical, political, or religious in nature, and they used text and images to convey a message or a story. Some examples of pioneer comics are William Hogarth's A Harlot's Progress in 1732, a series of 6 engravings that depict the downfall of a prostitute, and Benjamin Franklin's Join or Die from 1754, a political cartoon that urged the American colonies to unite against the British. Next is the Platinum Age, 1897 to 1937. The Platinum Age is the period when comic books became a distinct medium, separate from newspapers and magazines. The first comic book is generally considered to be The Yellow Kid in McFadden's Flats from 1897, a collection of comic strips featuring a bald street urchin created by Richard F. Outcault. The Platinum Age saw the rise of genres such as humor, adventure, fantasy, and science fiction, as well as the introduction of color printing and original material. Some of the most popular characters of this era were Buster Brown, Little Nemo, Crazy Cat, and Popeye. The Golden Age, 1938 to 1956, is the period when comic books reached their peak of popularity and influence thanks to the creation of superheroes. Now, the first superhero comic book was Action Comics #1 from 1938, which introduced Superman, the archetype of all superheroes. The Golden Age also saw the debut of other iconic heroes such as Batman, Wonder Woman, Captain America, and Captain Marvel. Superheroes dominated the comic book market during World War II as they fought against Nazi and Japanese villains and inspired patriotism and morale. Other genres that flourished in this era were crime, horror, romance, and westerns. Following World War II is the period when comic books faced a decline in sales and quality, as well as a backlash from critics and authorities who blamed them for juvenile delinquency and social problems. Sometimes called pre-code horror, it was marked by the rise of new genres such as science fiction, horror, and romance, which often featured sensationalistic and violent content. The most controversial comic book publisher of this era was EC Comics, which produced titles such as Tales from the Crypt, Weird Science, and Mad Magazine. The Golden Age began its end with the establishment of the Comics Code Authority in 1954, a self-regulatory body that imposed strict censorship rules on comic books. The Silver Age, 1956 to 1970. The Silver Age is the period when comic books experienced a revival and a creative renaissance, thanks to the reinvention of superheroes. The Silver Age began with Showcase number 4 from 1956, which introduced Barry Allen as the New Flash, a modernized version of the Golden Age hero. With the succession of other restyled DC heroes from the Golden Age, the Silver Age also saw the emergence of Marvel Comics, which created a new wave of superheroes such as Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, X-Men, Hulk, and many others. These heroes were more realistic, flawed, and relatable than their predecessors, and often faced social issues such as racism, war, and drugs. The Silver Age also expanded the scope and diversity of comic book genres, such as war, spy, humor, and underground comics. The Bronze Age, 1970 to 1985. The Bronze Age is the period when comic books became more mature and sophisticated, reflecting the changes in society and culture. The Bronze Age was characterized by darker themes, complex plots, and moral ambiguity, and also social commentary. Some of the landmark publications of this era were Green Lantern Green Arrow by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, which tackled issues such as racism, drug abuse, and corruption. Conan the Barbarian by Roy Thomas and Barry Windsor Smith, which brought sword and sorcery to comics. Swamp Thing by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson, which blended horror and ecology. X-Men by Chris Claremont and John Byrne, which explored themes such as diversity, oppression, and identity. Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons, which deconstructed the superhero genre. And The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller, which redefined Batman as an anti-hero. The Copper Age, 1985 to 1991, is the period when comic books became darker, grittier, and more violent, influenced by the trends in movies, music, and politics. It was marked by the rise of independent and alternative publishers such as Dark Horse, Image, and the DC imprint Vertigo, which offered more creative freedom and diversity to comic book creators. Some of the more influential and controversial comics of this era were The Killing Joke by Alan Moore and Brian Boland, which depicted the Joker's brutal assault on Batgirl. The Crow by James O'Barr, which was inspired by the author's personal tragedy. Mouse by Art Spiegelman, which portrayed the Holocaust through anthropomorphic animals. Sandman by Neil Gaiman, which blended mythology, fantasy, and horror. And Sin City by Frank Miller, which was an homage to film noir and hard-boiled fiction. The modern age of comics follows the Copper Age, but I've divided my time frame for the modern age into two parts. Part 1 I call the Spec Age, and Part 2 the Movie Age. The Spec Age covers 1992 through 1998 and is the period when comic books became more flashy, stylized, and sensationalized, driven by the demand for collectibles and speculation. The Spec Age was dominated by Image Comics, a company founded by former Marvel artists who wanted to own their own characters and have more artistic control. Image Comics produced titles such as Spawn, Youngblood, Wildcats, and Savage Dragon, which featured anti-heroes, violence, sex appeal, and dynamic artwork. In 1993, a coalition of African-American writers and artists started Milestone Comics, believing that minority characters were underrepresented in American superhero comics. Some of the company's better-known series include Static, about an African-American teen who became Milestone's key character. Hardware, an example of Afrofuturism. Icon, about an alien mimicking the appearance of an African-American. And Blood Syndicate, a series about a multicultural gang of superheroes. All of these flagship titles were co-created by Dwayne McDuffie. In 1997, the Milestone universe merged with the DC universe. The Spec Age also saw the proliferation of gimmicks such as variant covers, holograms, foil stamps, polybags, and trading cards. The Spec Age ended with the collapse of the comic book market in the late 1990s, caused by the emergence of the direct market and the collector boom. 2/3 of all comic book retailers closed in this period, and numerous publishers were driven out of business. Modern Age Part 2 is the movie age, beginning in 1998 and continuing to the present. The movie age is the current period of comic book history, characterized by the influence of movies, television, video games, and the internet on comic books. The movie age began in 1998 with Blade, which was the first successful Marvel attempt at making a movie and leading to the resurgence of mainstream superheroes thanks to the success of film adaptations such as X-Men in 2000, Spider-Man in 2002, Batman Begins in 2005, and Iron Man in 2008. The movie age has also seen the diversification of comic book genres, such as manga, graphic novels, webcomics, and digital comics. The movie age has also witnessed the growth of comic book fandom, conventions, and culture, as well as the recognition of comic books as a legitimate and influential form of art and entertainment. The movie age saw some of the most creative and diverse comic books of any era, and pushed the boundaries of the medium. This period saw a renaissance in comic book storytelling, with series like Daredevil, Far Sector, and Gideon Falls leading the charge. The Walking Dead became a cultural touchstone, while Batman the Court of Owls and Sandman Overture offered fresh takes on classic characters. Y, The Last Man, and Saga explored new worlds with compelling narratives, and Black Panther and The Umbrella Academy stood out for their cultural impact and unique storytelling. These titles are just a glimpse into the rich landscape of comic books from this era. The exploration of comic book ages reveals a rich tapestry of cultural and artistic evolution, from the pioneering Platinum Age to the transformative Modern Age. Each period reflects the shifting tastes, societal norms, and technological advancements of its time. The Golden Age introduced iconic superheroes. The Silver Age saw a creative explosion. The Bronze and Copper Ages brought complexity and diversity. And the Modern Age has pushed boundaries in storytelling. While these ages provide a framework for understanding comic book history, they also remind us that the medium is ever evolving, continually adapting to new generations of readers and creators. As we look back on these ages, we not only celebrate the milestones of the past, but also anticipate the innovations that will define the future of the comic book. The journey through the ages of comics is a testament to the enduring power of this unique art form to captivate, reflect, and inspire. Do you agree with the way I've set out these ages? Do you have any other defining characteristics that you think should apply to any one of them? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Be well, and I'll see you in the next one.